What if there are people on the planet that understand that when people are in a lot of fear, they're a lot easier to control. When people are in anger, they're a lot easier to control. Whether you are for this political party over here, or this one over here, or you're mad at this person over here, or this group over here, the more division you can create, the more polarity there is, the more people are in survival emotions and are in reaction, and the easier they are to control. Now, what if there were certain things you can do, certain ways you could be, certain ways you could relate to this information that would allow you to finally take your power back? When you think you might be feeding, you think you might be taking your power back and you might be focused on what you want to create in the world, you might be actually feeding the ulterior agenda. And there are people that may understand this and that may, whether you're for this side or this side, be putting you in reaction mode, in survival mode, have you siphoning your energy towards agendas that might not actually be your own. And what if there was a way out? What if there's a way back into your own power? Now, first off, I'll say I have made a video or two in the past on this idea of the Great Awakening and shared some of these concepts, and some of those videos got a lot of attention, but I stopped talking about it. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my experience of talking about the Great Awakening. Now, first off, I'll say that back in 2020, when everything was happening, I questioned things. I questioned things and I questioned what I was being shown. And I made that of videos on Instagram talking about what I really thought and felt. And it wasn't from some conspiracy theory, just like out there perspective. It was like an intuitive feeling. It was also like looking at all the resources, things not adding up. And I remember sharing different things. Like there was certain information that was coming out. Like, for example, when everything was happening, there were, in New York, for example, there was this story about, oh, this hospital is full. We have to use this hospital over here. And then teenagers broke into one of the hospitals and showed that it was empty. So it was being lied to, and this was being projected all over the news that this was the case when actually teenagers broke in and it wasn't being used. There was some exaggeration of what was happening to make it look way more worse, to keep people in way more fear. Well, I talk about this on YouTube. I talk about this on Instagram. And what was interesting was, on one hand, there was a lot of people that were very happy I was making that kind of content, had the courage to share it. On the other side of it, it was interesting. I had friends that I knew like my whole entire life from high school that were so angry that I was sharing a perspective like that I've never spoke to them since. And I was like, okay, well, I still believe this. However, then what happened is, for 2 or 3 weeks, I was sharing some of this content, but eventually what I realized is it was creating a lot of even more polarity. So for example, long story short on that whole thing, the exaggeration and the things I was talking about, the exaggeration of the media and how it was made to look way worse, and the restrictions that were happening around masks and all this stuff. I had different perspectives about it, to find out years later that it was the case, that there was an exaggeration of it. Like, I don't think a lot of people wouldn't, like, even my grandpa, for example, who passed away because he was on dialysis. He died and was labeled as having the thing when he didn't have the thing. And his last week or two in the hospital, no one could even go see him because of the thing, even though he didn't have the thing, but just because of the rules. So he wasn't able to see loved ones the last week or two he was alive because of it. And he was still labeled as having the thing. When we were on the phone with him, he's like, I don't have this thing they're talking about. He was just on his last days because of dialysis. But things just weren't adding up. And then sharing about it really began to have people questioning things. When people were looking at these things, when looking at these ulterior agendas, ulterior motives. So talking about it back in 2020, 2021, I did make some videos talking about this. And it was interesting, though. One thing that did happen is after sharing this information, I realized that, my intention is to share information that helps people to elevate their vibration. On one hand, some of this information can be beneficial. On the other hand, people can get trapped in an energy where they're like, yes, us versus them. You see all this crazy stuff happening in the world. Screw this. And it can create a lot of energy. But I almost realized it was creating even more polarity, except for it was against like the system. And I realized also that my dreams were getting kind of weird because there was so much energy being, it was just a darker energy of things to focus on. And it was affecting my dreams. And I just realized it was affecting my teachings in a certain way to where I stopped talking majority about that kind of stuff, even though I believe that there are people on the planet that know that when you keep people in fear and anger, they're much easier to control. That when people have separate opinions and whether you're on this side or this side, you're feeding negative timelines, negative thought forms. You think about this from even an esoteric perspective of thought forms. The Maharishi effect, for example, when 1,000 people are focused on love and light, decreased violent crimes in the planet. They've done that with 5,000 transcendental meditators. They've shown this in many different versions many times, but that works in one way. But on the other side of it, it also works. You keep a lot of people in fear and in anger. Whether you're for this side or this side, you're feeding what are called the pendulum, the thought forms. Which is interesting, right? So one thing you might notice is that there's someone you really, really dislike. The more you dislike them, the more they trigger you, the more you're feeding that frame. So the very thing that you don't want to do, you end up doing, which is interesting. Now, when we talk about the Great Awakening, what I'm going to be talking about in this video is what you can do with your energy, what I think energetically is happening, and a larger perspective that will help you find peace in this whole entire situation. Now, first off, let's talk about the fourth turning. There's something called the fourth turning that is here right now. Now, the fourth turning is, Tony Robbins, he has this thing called the Platinum Partnership. It's like you pay $100,000 a year to be a part of his community of other successful people. And he brings in these authors and these viewpoints, very interesting. And one of them, he brought in this guy's, these authors. They're the historians named Neil Howe and William Strauss. And they have a book, or there's this book that's on something called the fourth turning. And what it talks about is that there's these 4 cycles that history goes through, about 80-year cycles. And it's historically proven that this kind of thing happens. And this is why it's predicting the cycle that we're in right now. And there's some interesting things that this shows. And the fourth turning, so there's these different cycles that show what's happening. There's a high cycle, there's the awakening cycle, the unraveling cycle, and then the fourth turning is the crisis cycle. The crisis cycle has been happening since 2008 up until about 2028. Now, during the crisis cycle, and I'll give a spiritual perspective as I look at kind of the energies of what's happened in the last, 20 years and kind of where things are going, because I think there's a reason that Trump has so much appeal when it comes to the politics of everything, because there is an unraveling of old systems that no longer work. And I think that's why there's a desire for someone that's not a politician that has way more power than the old system, the old way of going about things. So when we talk about this, the crisis, that is that of 2008 to 2028 is the period that it talks about. These people also back in 2016, 2015, there was a talk they did for Tony Robbins people as well, Tony Robbins event. And they talked about how in 2020, there would be this big climax thing that's going to happen, that's going to change things. Well, guess what happened in 2020? The Lakers won. I'm just kidding. I think the Lakers did win, actually. It just popped in my head. But you know what happened, obviously. But what happened is there is this moving out of this old energy. And there is this desire for kind of like a new way of being. a new system in a way. And the old dynamics are beginning to fall out. Now, before that, in the third section, which is called the Unraveling, one thing that begins to happen in that section, which was from 1985 to 2008, is very often there's this minority. There's like almost like these minority groups become very powerful, and there's a big focus on separation. And if you think about some of the things that are happening in the world and how much media gives attention to these separate segregation of like labels, like it's becoming a thing where like you get to decide who you are and everyone else has to associate that is who you are. And it becomes this really strong hold on identity. But guess what's on the other side of that? Separation. You are now separate from everyone else because I want to be called this specific pronoun. This is who I am. Separation. I am not you. We are different. You need to call who I am. There's a big sensitivity around this. And there's a lot of power and energy that goes towards that. And it talks about how during the unraveling stage, it's almost like an outdated. And if you look at some of the political party side of things, you can see that certain energy, certain things energetically are beginning to shift, where there is this desire for more almost uniformity, but also for a direct, like almost something that's not based on the old system in a way. So when we look at this fourth turning that is happening right now on the planet, a lot of it also has to do with just realizing the old systems aren't working. There is a desire there's a desire and an awakening that is happening. Even though one of the stages is called awakening, so many people are waking up. So many people are beginning to question things. And it talks about how what are some of the other things it predicts? 2026, a great devaluation as the economy is entirely restructured for a new set of circumstances. I personally believe this could be maybe connected to cryptocurrency somehow. I believe that's like a new way of doing, it seems like a new way, a new technology that obviously, money itself isn't even backed by gold, but I believe that there's obviously a finite number of Bitcoin, for example. I'm not a cryptocurrency expert or anything. I'm just kind of talking out loud about some of the things that I could see energetically shifting around right now, kind of giving a new perspective. And then towards the end of the video, I want to share with you a perspective that will give you a lot of peace with this whole entire process as well. 2030 talks about society changing revolution, typical of fourth turnings to come. Yeah, there's certain things that happen that at the end of certain cycles will trigger the next cycle. Like, for example, the high period from 1946 to 1964, towards the end of that was the JFK, what happened to JFK, and then that spawned the awakening cycle of 1965 to 1984. So it's interesting. In 2008, there was a big crisis of 2008, the financial markets and everything, which I found to be very interesting that kind of, spawned that. And since then, people have been questioning the government. People have been questioning the media. People have been having their own perspective about things, and it's very interesting to see just how much things have shifted due to these different events and these different things happening. So the fourth turning is something that historically has been shown to happen over a long period of time. Right now, we are at the very end. We're getting towards the end of the crisis period, but you can expect during this time to be a lot of volatility, a lot of polarity, a lot of we're in a pressure cooker. And the thing is if when you're in a pressure cooker, you're being extremely reactive to everything that's happening, whether it's this political party or this political party. Understand, it's keeping you in reactive mode. It's keeping you in survival mode. It's keeping you feeding a paradigm that you may not actually want. Now, let's talk about this with this whole Trump versus Biden. Obviously, Biden's not in the election anymore for this upcoming, but regardless, when you see what is happening, the amount of energy, of polarity that is happening, it is causing a pressure cooker. Whether you're for one, against one, it is causing this big apparent separation of energy. Now, the key through this dynamic, through this polarity of energy, is becoming aware of where your energy is going. Because if you are feeding, if you are focused and angry, also understand that these political candidates, We're all one consciousness at the deepest core. The things we are triggered by in these people also are energies that exist inside of us. People don't want to hear this. I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, especially like people, very triggered by Trump or Biden. I mean, are people really triggered by Biden? They just kind of feel bad for him, I think. Anyways, we don't have to go down too far down this rabbit hole, but I'm just more so talking about like it's an empowering thing to understand, to really look at, and I kind of see it as this play of energy of things that are happening in collective society, and what and how we can begin to look at ourselves and to see the different aspects of our own consciousness and why certain things do trigger us. And part of this is also understanding that for a long time, whether one side or the other, people are waiting to be saved. People are waiting and hoping, if this happens, this is going to be horrible. If this happens, this is going to be horrible. And that creates this savior complex, this savior dynamic where, well, you can be good with whatever happens in the world over the next, couple years. You can be good either way. It's a perspective. It is a understanding and a choice that you can make. There are people that thrive in a recession, and there are people that fall in a recession. What is the difference? The perspective, the opportunity that you can see. So the reason I say this is to stop giving away your power. Whether you're for one, against the one, stop giving away your power and stop assuming anyone is going to save you. Because when there's that mentality there's an externalization of power. So let's talk about the media. A lot of things when it comes to the media is people don't believe it the same way they used to. So one thing, I think media nowadays has even changed. Like, what do we view the media as? Like YouTube channels. There are certain YouTube channels that have more media power. I mean, you look at Joe Rogan or something like that, has way more media power than any one mainstream media news outlet, right? Even my grandma, who for years was always watching politics, all of a sudden kind of stopped and was like, yeah, I don't really believe in this. Because I could see there was other agendas that she was beginning to question. Things weren't adding up. It's a good thing. Question it. You don't put your energy into it. You're then not being influenced. Your perspective is not influenced. If you think about the separation that we may be very hyper attuned to, different separation when it comes to I am this, you are that, feeling the separate. That's been infused into our society to keep us separate. When we talk about the shadow side of this as well, I can see a desire for certain people to really be seen. Like there's like an inner child part of us that wants to be seen. I want you to acknowledge me. Maybe mom or dad or in childhood, there was not that acknowledgement. So I want you to acknowledge me. I want the external to acknowledge me. And I think the shadow work here is for us to become aware of taking ownership and responsibility for our energy and to stop feeding it and to stop projecting it and demanding that society meet our own needs. And instead, we begin to take ownership of it and say, I'm going to put my energy where I want it to go. So another part of this is to understand that this polarity, to observe it, is where the power is. Because if you fight it and you say, screw this, you're feeding energy to the thing you say screw this to. If you can observe it, and then you can observe in yourself what that triggers within you, that's where we're really going to start doing the work. If you can observe where you're putting your energy and where it's draining your energy, that's going to be very powerful. Understand that there may be some form of agenda. And when people are separate, they're in fear, they're in anger, they're easier to control. And when you stop feeding it and you stop paying attention to it, you stop being polarized by it, you take your power back. So I don't actually watch the news. I guess what you call mainstream news anyways. I don't really pay attention to a lot of the drama and the stuff that is happening. I'm aware of some of it just because I'm on social media and for what I do for a living on, I have to be tapped in somewhat, but it doesn't affect me in the same way. I'm not like, I'm waiting for this to happen. If this doesn't happen, then oh my goodness, there's not that fear mentality. You're going to be good either way. But choosing, the best thing you could do if you want to elevate the vibration on the planet is for you to focus on elevating your own vibration. It's for you to stop putting your energy and your power into these other people and into these other things as if they're going to save you. And it's understanding that at the deepest core level, when you talk about forgiveness and you talk about how other people are other aspects of ourself, understand that certain people that are incarnated at this time, from what the Law of One talks about, from what Dolores Cannon with thousands of people in deep levels of hypnosis through their subconscious mind talks about, that's what her books are. And other sources, they talk about how right now on the planet, there's a great shift in consciousness that is happening, but there's also a reincarnation of a lot of energies that are playing themselves out from a long period of time. So people that are alive right now could be reincarnated from different time periods, playing out different karmic patterns that we're a part of because we're part of this collective consciousness, but they're also other aspects of our own consciousness. So in a way, they're playing out different energies to give us the opportunity of experience. Because one of the things it talks about in the Law of One, Dolores Cannon, and other materials, is that we forget who we are when we come here, to then remember who we are, to then grow, raise our vibration, elevate, expand our awareness. And we sometimes need the pressure cooker to help us to do that. Think about any of you watching this video right now that have been through a spiritual awakening. Can you see that the pressure that caused your spiritual awakening was probably some pain or challenge or trauma from your past? Almost everyone I know that's had a spiritual awakening has had some catalyst for it. Well, what do you think's happening at a societal level right now? The crisis, fourth turning. It's a catalyst for us to elevate our vibration to the next level. So understand that where you put your energy is where you put your power. Understand that no one's coming to save you. Understand that the things that trigger you and these other people are also other aspects of your own consciousness. Doesn't mean be passive and follow your passion and what you believe in, but what I'm saying is be aware of where your energy is and what is affecting your energy. And focus on elevating yourself. Now, one thing we could do is come together for group meditation. I think that can very powerfully affect the planet. Most we've done is we had 12,000 people live at one moment, and the Schumann resonance the next day was off the chart, which is the frequency of the planet. In High Vibe Tribe, if you haven't joined it yet, it's a free community. We've got 40,000 people in there. We do guided group activations, meditations for bringing energy onto the planet. And I think one very powerful thing to us to do is allow that divine energy to come through using the power of group intention. So if you want to join that, I'll go ahead and link High Vibe Tribe below for you to join. And understand that we don't need to manipulate. We don't need to be saved. We don't need to be manipulated. This is a part of a process. So when you go through a process, you can either be extremely in fear and reaction, or you can observe it and know that all is a part of the divine plan. We don't need to manipulate and control it. We can allow and just choose our own energy, choose where we're putting our focus, choose what we are embodying. And essentially what we're doing is we're moving from an old way of being, an old reality, into what is called New Earth. I know that sounds kind of esoteric. However, there are 5 things you must give up to be in this New Earth frequency. This is a grounded, practical video that will show you everything you need to do that will completely transform your life and put you on the right timeline. You can check it out right here.
There is a New Earth energy that is emerging on the planet that most people are